Good evening. Good evening to our members, council officers and members of the public who are with us both in person and hopefully online this evening. Thank you for joining us. I would like, as a brief, to remind all those present that we are online. We are live streaming and recording the meeting this evening. So please do be careful of what you say whilst we are here this evening. Your presence is your consent to be broadcast in such a manner. I would also ask anyone that's in attendance when speaking not to mention any form of personally identifiable information. Any mention of such could infringe on the rights of individuals in question and of course place you in question of breaking local and European data protection laws. So please do be careful. Welcome once again to the evening. We will start with Part A, administration. Apologies for absence. I have in front of me apologies from Mr. Tarrant. I also have an apology from Councillor Patel, who may be joining us virtually, but is with us yet. Haven't heard from Councillor Watkins, I believe.
No.
Lovely. Part 2, declarations of interest. I would ask any members present who may have a declaration of interest under disclosable or non-disclosable pecuniary matters to declare now, please. No. And we will move rapidly on to our public open session. I would like to remind you that you have 3 minutes to speak this evening. We don't have a clock on the wall, so I will ask you to it's a bit slow. I will ask you to rely on my stopwatch, but I will try and give you a little bit of brevity as required. So please, if you would like to pop, where's the best place to stand?
Any point in the room should be okay.
It should be okay. So in which case, yeah, please, probably towards the wall, and everyone can see you.
Right, so I'm Helen Kingerley. I'm from Biggleswade Scout Group, and I think our chair of trustees has emailed one of the ward councillors about access to the Scout Hut. Sorry, access to the Scout Hut. But I thought it'd be a really good forum to just raise that here with both town councillors and ward councillors present. So there's a couple of things. We have about 200 young people who access the Scout Hut on a sort of weekly basis. It's used every night of the week, and we have a number of volunteers and our young people who have mobility issues and also visual impairment. The Scout Hut is based on an alleyway that runs from London Road through to Mead End. It's only accessible by foot, and that alleyway is often overgrown in the summer. In the autumn, you get a lot of leaves falling and it becomes quite slippy in the rain. Occasionally, there's tree roots starting to break up the tarmac. It's also used as a cut through on a daily basis by a lot of school children in the mornings as well. So it was whether there's any way that we can have some sort of schedule to actually look at the maintenance of that alleyway to stop trip and slip hazards rather than waiting for a fix my street thing to go in. There's also really poor lighting down there, and as we get into the darker nights, with children some as young as 6 who are going, and siblings who may be even younger, using that alleyway, and it is known for drug dealing. So whether there's anything that could be done about street lighting, extra police presence, or anything like that. It does border on the Abbott Street care home that used to be there, that's been demolished, so it's CBC land. There is a dog leg in that alleyway, 2 90-degree turns. Whether now that the care home's gone, whether there's anything that the public rights of way people can do at taking the dog leg out and making the lines of sight down there better. And also the last little plug was really if there's any sort of consultations or applications looking at that land, which is whatever is going to be on Abbott Street going forward, that possibly we could be consulted to look at maybe vehicular access, disabled access, loading or unloading or something like that, because we have a lot of camping equipment as well that has to be pushed down the alley in trucks by hand to get it out. If we're doing any maintenance on the hedges, we have to get it out to the cars to sort of get it to dispose of the green waste and stuff like that. So it was really just to raise the issues that we're having, and to please bear us in mind if there are any consultations that could actually benefit the young people of the community by improving the access to the Scout Park. I'm not sure if that's 3 minutes, but
2 minutes. Right, thank you.
thank you.
Fabulous work. Thank you for coming. I will open that for discussion.
I'm happy to respond to this one first of all.
Please.
Obviously, I know we've spoken in the past, and that site is very much, what happens to that site is very much up for discussion and debate at the moment. So there is no decision about what that will become going forward. And I think I'm possibly speaking slightly out of turn here, but I think the CBC will probably be unlikely to do a great deal in terms of putting any major infrastructure in that area until that decision has been made, because obviously it could be, okay, but I think in terms of having a maintenance schedule for that area, I think that's something we could take back to environmental services, as something that we can ask for.
Yeah, I think that would make a huge improvement.
Absolutely, and we can ask about the street lighting, because depending on exactly where we want to put it, it might not be some, it might be something we would do anyway in the future. So I think that's definitely something as well we can pick up. Just so this is Councillor Hare's, those aren't aware, so again, that's something we can also pick up. So maybe that's something we can pick back. So yeah, and we can ask the safe neighbourhoods to pick up as well. So I think there's a few actions from that, which I myself feel.
Yeah,
we're happy to pick up.
Thank you.
thank you.
Please.
Hello, I'm Carol Russell. I'm sorry, I got my hand out there. I'm from the Community Safety Group. I'm the secretary to the Community Safety Group. And I wanted to raise a few issues about the crime stats that we're seeing. We're seeing a lot of, continually seeing shoplifting as a major issue in Biggleswade, and assaults, both with injury and without injury, in a really high level. Is anything being done to address those issues? But I can imagine for the shops, it must be challenging for them, particularly if it's the smaller shops being affected. Is it going to impact on their viability and their willingness to invest in the town going forward? And then the other area, really echoing what the lady from the Scouts was saying about the quality of repairs and so on. Potholes in Biggleswade, we've got some massive ones on Potton Road and some massive ones on London Road. I've been reporting things on Fix My Streets and not really seeing much of a response back from them, or there's like a temporary repair and then about 3 weeks later it's open again. The problem just isn't being fixed in a sustainable way. But those were the two issues I wanted to raise. Thank you.
Thank you. Just conscious that I didn't double check, and that is my fault, apologies, whether there was any other feedback on the previous presentation before we move to Carol's point. I suppose no, fine. Thank you, Carol. So I'll open that one as well then, please.
I'll pick it up a few ways. Thank you, Carol. I think it'd be useful to know more about the assaults, where they're taking place, so that we can look into that in a bit more detail. So, for example, is there anything we can do about improving lighting, or sort of making sure we've got more police patrols and stuff like that in the areas? So, if you or actually, I can speak to and find out what's going on.
Yeah, Lisa, I mean, Jimmy, if you're the community safety group, are you in touch with the community safety team at CBC?
Yes, we are. Yes. Yeah. So
let's try and find out where they are, so we can do a bit, see what we can do around that, because I agree that's really concerning. Shoplifting wise, I think there might be some national initiatives around shoplifting at the moment, but again, I think we need to go back and take that away and look into that.
Definitely,
it was a theme that was raised in the budget of the joint committee meeting as well. I think the cost of living situation has exacerbated it. We're working on start the conversation to see what we can do, CBC with the three.
And then potholes wise, two things. One is temporary repair should only be happening in a few instances. One is where it would require traffic control in order to do a permanent repair. Getting traffic control in place takes about 12 weeks. So it's not something that can happen very quickly. So for some of our major roads like London Road, in order to do a proper repair and get that traffic control in is taking quite a long time. So for example, I'm thinking outside Dillycoff where we know we've got those undulations, it's taken forever, but I know it's on the schedule to be done. But there are some other areas. Some of the areas that I think are classed as potholes do not meet the CBC KPIs for being potholes. So there's something that is referred to as scabbing, where just the top surface of the road is missing. So while it doesn't look nice, it's not pleasant to drive or cycle over. The risk of injury is low, which is why it doesn't met by our insurers, which is why it's not prioritised for repair. It does mean that when the surface below that starts to break up, they will repair it, but it sometimes means that the repairs that look huge don't get done. And that's the conversation I was actually having yesterday about whether we can do something about that, because my feeling is no pothole has ever been known to repair itself. So therefore, even if it's scabbing, it's only ever going to get worse. It's never going to get better. So we need to be moving more towards a programme of dealing with scabbing. So in reality, roads that are scheduled for bigger work, such as resurfacing, might also get temporary pothole fills. So there's two reasons really you might get a temporary fill. If it's scheduled for bigger works, or if they can't do a proper fix because of needing traffic control. So it shouldn't be happening. And if it is happening routinely, ping me an email and I'll look into it. Is that everything, Carol?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Town council used to receive crime statistics. I seem to recall when I was on the town council, we were finding the agendas were becoming a bit big and we weren't able to do too much with the crime statistics. But I don't know where they came from, but presumably, and I know a lot of effort from the admin team went into making them presentable and getting a good breakdown by ward, by type of crime, etc. I don't know the source of that information, whether it must have come directly from the police or perhaps via DTSO. Either way, I think getting some visibility over that, even if it's not reported to town council, and plugging it into the relevant groups, if that helps to inform whatever conversations you need to have, the community safety team can help support on. Perhaps that's something we could do as well. Don't want to create work for staff because we had that conversation about a year ago, but the data is there, the breakdown is there, but ultimately it is really a job for the police rather than our council.
On potholes, what does it actually mean if a pothole has got a yellow painted line around it? Because in London Road, what I would consider a pothole, which has been there for some time near the that's got a very faded yellow line around it, so it's also for a very long time. So does that mean that it's noted and scheduled for something to happen to it, or what's it for?
So I know exactly, and actually, unfortunately, that is scabbing and not a pothole. I know, because I've also looked into that particular one because it's huge. And again, I mentioned this I discussed this with someone from Highways yesterday, because although it is officially scabbing, it's on a very busy thoroughfare. It's only ever going to get worse. I just think we need to address it. I believe that the yellow lines that were drawn around those stretch of potholes were done by residents and not by the council. And I can say that because of the way that they were drawn and how they were done. And I think in the part they were done to highlight that they were there and to kind of say, look, we're not fixing these. But I don't believe that they were done by us as a council. In fact, I know they weren't done by us as a council. So that's why nothing's happened to them, if you like, because it wasn't, because as you know, normally they get marked up and then within a couple of weeks, because somebody will come out and do the repair.
Because that particular hole, if you went over that on a bicycle,
Yeah.
it would, yeah, you could easily come off. So it may be termed as scabbing, but it's a little more than that, I would suggest.
I've had a minute, so let's see what happens. It's also been there a long time.
Thank you. Anything else? From that point, any other questions from the floor?
Chairman, may I think there's no item on the agenda for members' questions, so could I ask a question of a member of the public, which I am also, obviously.
That's
I think you're really not, but you know what? I'm feeling generous. It's an evening meeting. Go on, why not? Go on, sorry.
On the 9th, sorry, the 10th of February, which is the group of some town councillors are meeting with Tom Price from CVC about the installation of rapid chargers for electric vehicles. It was left at, we had a number of questions that were left with him. Since then, I believe he has met with some officers from the town council, but we've had no real response to the questions we asked, and no evidence of any sort of progress of actually installing this thing. And I wondered if any water councillors knew anything about it, with regards to what's happened with our rapid charger.
I can follow that up with you. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Okay, thank you.
Good. If there's nothing else, we will move on, and thanks to the member of the public who have attended this evening. We will move on to minutes of previous meetings. Item number 4. Pending review, and we would like to propose those as a record. Which now? It's carried and approved. Thank you. Item number 5, matters arising from minutes of our Biggleswade joint committee meeting on the 13th of July. Please.
On page 6 towards the bottom, there is the record of discussion regarding the transport interchange project. I wonder if CVC has got it, can provide any information on when the interchange is likely to open to service.
I am looking at you, Councillor Litchfield.
You're all right.
So,
I'm never going to get more to speak tonight. I'm happy for answer. So I think as most people are aware, there are some issues with the interchange in terms of the rounding out of buses. A solution has been found. It's not particularly complex or expensive to do, and the last I heard, and we are due to have I'm looking at the ward members, a meeting next Friday for a further update. The last I heard, the work was being scheduled to be done, and so we're just waiting to find out when that's going to be done. That was the last that
You don't have a definite date.
we don't have.
Okay, thank you.
So I think the defect period with it runs up to May next year, sometime around then. So if and when there are things and it is operational by then, hopefully, I'm sure it will be. If there are defects or problems with it, we still have opportunities to raise those with the contractors, which is, I think, different.
Can I just add in, that's a good point, actually. There are issues, and I think I'd welcome input from the town council, because, for example, some of the planting spaces are far from ideal, I would say. They look awful. Some of the tarmac has got weeds coming through it. I think some of it's been addressed actually since I've raised it, but some of the trees look dead, but apparently they're not. But I think, again, we have to wait. I think we want that defect period because we want to make sure that they're not. Because I've raised it, that it appears some of the trees aren't doing very well. So I think we do, I go around there and have a look and monitor it. But I think we've got to make use of this defect period to make sure that what we get is as good as it can possibly be. And that might mean that we do have to be a bit more vigilant than we might want to be, unfortunately.
Any other matters, please?
Yeah, certainly on bottom of page 7 under 11A, of the report last time about the app bike scheme which had just been launched. Obviously at the time it was so new there were no figures. But I was in a meeting last week where I've been told that as of the 2nd of October, 92 residents have joined that scheme. So just thought I'd share that.
Thank you. Any others? No. Next up. We will move to item number 6, co-option process. I think Sarah or Karina taking possibly joining this one. The short report regarding process and objectives of co-option, please.
Thanks. So the note's been drafted between my officers in discussion with the chair and vice chair. Essentially, the existing joint committee terms of reference give the provision to co-opt up to 15 members to the committee, joint committee. Doesn't have to be all 15 at once, it can be an incremental process. And this obviously the idea in discussion with in the previous joint committee was also to give the opportunity to include wider views, expertise and voices across a whole range of topics. The note kind of sets out essentially how the committee's seeking to draw options for like representation from local businesses, business groups, youth organisations, and obviously green spaces as well. So there are a number of recommendations in it, so it's up for discussion.
Sarah, anything you add to that? Or?
No. Well, actually, yes, I think well, I think probably let members have a discussion really, but I think there are some other issues around equality and diversity that the committee will willing to take account of, and indeed are in the terms of reference. But yeah, no, that's a shame.
Thank you.
Well, definitely move the recommendation that we co-opt Cliff. If you're happy with that, then so I'd like to move that as a recommendation. And that we are constantly open to co-option until we meet the 15. So if those are the sort of 2 main recommendations that are coming from this report, I'm happy to move both of those. I just wanted to clarify on the 3rd bullet point though. We don't need to name names, but do these 2 individuals represent what we might consider to be community groups that are active in the parish of Biggleswade? If they are, great, because what I would worry about slightly is if we were representing individuals who are not as active in the community, for example, because I wouldn't want this to be a platform for those who are not part of the community group, a community group, for example. So I'm just curious that those 2 are. If so, then yes, definitely happy to move the 3rd as well.
Do I have a second for any of that? Thank you. We'll carry that as well. Thank you.
Can I just clarify the process? I'm not 100% clear after reading the document. What the process is, if I was somebody watching this, I'm looking at Carol as well, I'm being quite like the community secretary. If I were watching this and I wanted to be co-opted onto this committee, what would I do?
You would apply to the town council because they're part of this committee.
Okay.
The form is in the papers.
Yeah.
And it would be up to the committee to decide whether to co-opt or not. But as Councillor Favours just said, we are looking for people with particular skills or contributions. We're not looking for anybody who's just interested in being on the committee for the sake of being on the committee, which is why you need the application form, and then the committee will look at it and decide whether to co-opt those people or not. And it occurs to me, Chairman, that if we're going to be looking at these 2 people at the January meeting, it really ought to be done under exempt. Because it's not fair to look at applications when we don't know which way the committee's going to go on it.
I think that's fair, and I think given that we are likely to be discussing personal identifying information, I think it
Yeah.
needs to be exempt, so that item I think should. I think if you're willing, I think if I could ask you to propose that and ask for a second, so that we can stick that in and we can carry that.
Okay, I propose that.
That's
It's outlined.
Yeah, I see.
Can I just come back again? So are we? Because we did, like, I think when we last met, we did come up with a list of people or groups that we might want to approach.
Mhm.
Is the intention to approach and make them aware, because not everybody will be aware of this, is the intention to approach groups or to just wait?
I think it ought to be on the town council website and possibly, I don't know, through Central Bedfordshire in some way that it's possible to be co-opted.
Mhm.
But I'm personally not in favour of just going around lots of groups and saying, is there somebody who wants to come on the committee? Because in the end, if a group is represented, we want them to be senior enough in an organisation to be able to contribute. So, you know, I think there's a bit of a balance there. I think we need it to be obvious that the committee runs with co-option. Because I think we have to be a bit careful. We don't want 15 all at once who aren't necessarily contributing on issues that are current in the town.
Please.
Yeah, just unless I've missed it on the form, we've just been talking about we would want people to be part of a community group or similar. There's nothing on the form to say which group you do belong to, so I think that would be useful.
Yeah, so can I just clarify what we're looking to propose then? So, because we've got 3 recommendations, but the first one is a little vague, like we've discussed it. So if we look at the second one then, so propose that we co-opt Cliff this evening, and just to be clear, I think we should actually do a show of hands for that, because if in future we're going to have people come forward and perhaps at some point we might be oversubscribed, so we will have to actually vote on these things. So I think we should start that practice tonight if we can. Then the second proposal that we consider the 2 further expressions of interest in January, and perhaps we can consider their application forms as well. And then to the point that's just been made, I think Hayley and Madeline both made, that yes, it should be on the town council website, and we should be proactive in putting it out there in the community for community groups to consider putting some people.
But it's not just community groups, it's businesses in the town. You know, we've
Right.
got, this is where the terminology is difficult, because we want commercial input as well. I mean, some years ago, we had a representative from one of the businesses on the Stratton Business Park. And it, you know, the group that they used to run there between the businesses, I understand has stopped now. But, you know, it would be great to have 1 or 2 people from the business community, maybe one from the town centre, one from the business park. So, you know, it's not just community groups,
No.
it's the whole gamut. But, you know, this is why it's a bit complicated.
Okay, well, I think the point still stands then that this is publicised appropriately, and we trust officers to make this available
Yeah.
to encourage nominations. Unless someone can think of some better wording.
Just to come back in, I've just confirmed with Sarah, co-optees are, we review co-optees annually as a committee. So I think that's also useful, because what groups or representatives that are relevant to this committee this year, as things change, might not be relevant next year. So if we are, I've got a massive number of people suddenly interested this year, I think, you know, we do have the option to change it next year. So I think that's also something that's worth bearing in mind. It's an annual process.
That's important.
Well, what Councillor Page has just been talking about is effectively a proposal. I'm happy to second that. I think all those issues, I mean, obviously, as he says, we've just discussed it and we come up with 1 or 2 issues, but the 2 other recommendations, and the fact that we need to change the application form and advertise the fact that we have co-optees on this committee and see what happens. So I'm happy to supplement it.
Good. Thank you. And to your final point, so Paige talked about formal co-option of Cliff and a show of hands, so I will also open that up the floor for a show of hands in favour of co-option if Andrews. Thank you. Any against?
You don't get away with
That's all right. Next year, maybe.
There's a route out now. Good. Okay. Fine. Thank you. Any other points on co-option? It is, I think, a complex one. I would like to go on record and state that Madeline and I have met. We've talked about this endlessly. We've been through a number of iterations of the paperwork. Clearly wasn't quite perfect, but I think we're getting there and we know what we want to do with this committee, which is a really good sign. So I'm pleased with the progress.
Myself, on record, I really would like to see the voice of some of our younger residents on this committee.
Yeah, again, actually, on that point, if you permit it, creative license, we did discuss that, didn't we? And again, I think having that younger voice, and again, to Sarah's point around EDI matters as well, we should be very conscious of that. So, good. Okay. If there's nothing else, I will move on. Quick run room. Thank you. Okay. Item number 7. Biggleswade Joint Committee Strategic Impact Part A, CVC to provide an overview of joint committees in Central Bedfordshire. It's an action from the previous meeting, so I'm assuming that's on Sarah.
Yes, and I apologise that I think I did offer to do some slides which weren't circulated with the paper, so I have done some slides. Not sure I've got the technology to log on to there, but I think when it was connected with the aspiration that the committee moves from a sort of quite an operational discussion to a much more strategic view about the town, and I think I offered to explore or explain to you what the other 3 joint committees have been discussing in the last year or so, and I'm really pleased Councillor Hayes is here tonight, and we've been having discussions about evolving the joint committees and moving them forward. So hopefully it's all in that vein, but this is all work in progress, isn't it? That nothing is, agreed or on the table, but perhaps it just helps you have a discussion about what you want to achieve as a joint committee. So as I think I've said previously, there are, I can get my slide, there are 4 agreed joint committees. Terms of reference are in our constitution, and obviously they're clerked by helpfully by the town council. So we have 4: Dunstable, Biggleswade, Leighton Linslade and Houghton Regis, and we have I'd say fledgling, for want of a better word, joint committee arrangement in Flitwick that has met only once, but there are certainly aspirations in the town to have a joint committee of some kind, but discussions as to whether that could be jointly with Ampthill, and indeed include other parishes. So there's other models potentially emerging that we're keen and interested to try out. And as I said before, the joint committees, I think importantly, it's helpful to remind ourselves they are area based and very much focused on the locality or the town. They're member led and have that, they are unique in having that ward and that town council representation in equal numbers. And as you've just been discussing, they have that opportunity to co-opt other voices and other expertise onto that committee. So very much a forum to discuss issues that are important to you as locally elected members, but to bring that other expertise on board. And as I said last time, you have your terms of reference, and the key purpose, and therefore the key purpose of the joint committees is to influence decisions and help shape initiatives that impact on the town, and try and take into account that resident voice, the voice of business, voice of young people, etc., to help you come to a view and influence your thinking as well. So as we've had tonight, some public participation, which is always great, because that is one of the purposes of the committee. Co-option, we've talked about, and you are pursuing that, so that's great. Going back to, and I can remember, unfortunately, going back to 2017, we did do a review of the joint committees, which led to the new terms of reference and a number of other changes. I don't think we're keen to go into that type of review again, but I think there's appetite for evolving and transitioning the joint committees to something else. But to get to the main point, I think last time you were keen to know what the other joint committees have been talking about. So in Leighton Rinslade, much the same as Biggleswade, very focused on your market square. That's the same in Leighton Rinslade, very focused on the high street, and particularly the opportunities around what we know as land south of the high street. They also at the moment have a key interest in health, sometimes a health hub, but more generally health facilities across the town. And then other things that impact on how well the town functions, really. So taxis and where they park, parking and parking spaces, but also they have, the committee does and has talked about visitor attractions, so Tiddenfoot, for example, but also new developments, new opportunities in the town. So obviously the new leisure centre for Leighton was discussed at the partnership committee. But also Leighton is quite unique in that it has a community forum, bit dysfunctional at the moment, and it hasn't met for a year or so, but it does have a community forum and has in the past run community engagement events to better connect with the wider community of Leighton. And there is a community forum representative that sits on the joint committee, so that's a bit like Cliff as well. In Dunstable again, very interested in the high street and the regeneration of. They've also discussed and actually now meet at the health hub. The town council produce a regular report about what it's doing and what it's doing in the town. So very much a town centre focus. Houghton Regis discusses quite a wide range of things: All Saints View, Bedford Square Community Centre, the new Houston School. All of those things have been discussed and are of interest to the joint committee. And then Biggleswade, obviously you've discussed all the HIP projects as they come through. The health hub you've discussed, and Stratton Business Park, etc., as well as all the highways projects. So that really gives a flavour of what's going on in the other joint committees. But I think when we were talking about the joint committees only whenever it was, I can't remember, yesterday or the day before, I can't remember now, but you know, and how we help and what we can do to, you know, help you move along and achieve more or differently than previously. And I think, you know, that discussion on co-option is just really helpful to do that. So hopefully that's helpful. It's a bit of a road trip around Central Bedfordshire's joint committees.
Conscious that our next item is a joint committee further discussion on moving towards our own strategic role. So asking our members to avoid overlapping with the next item, Were there any questions on Sarah's presentation specifically?
Not a question if we're going to get some feedback, because I think we're struggling on how to make this more strategic. And how to have a better influence for the committee in both councils. But we don't want to be taking over the other council roles. How do we fit into that niche, and how do we connect with the right people in both councils? So I don't know where you want to take that, Sharon.
I think I will take that as an opener to the next section, because I think it's probably less relevant to Sarah's presentation and more relevant to the wider discussion, unless anybody objects to that approach.
Are any of the other joint committees looking at changing the way they do things? Are they looking at a more strategic approach?
Not in such a specific and direct way, I think, as you have intimated, but moving in that direction, if that makes sense. So they haven't sort of said, oh, and woken up one morning, we want to be more strategic and we're going to do this instead. They are evolving and doing things differently, and that's largely a reflection that there's new members on board, etc. So it will inevitably go in a different direction. I would say they make good use of their ability to resolve something. So making use of motions to agree a collaborative view about something. And then I take that back obviously to the relevant service team and indeed portfolio holder. So yeah, greater use of the ability to resolve and resolve a motion has certainly been happening then.
Anything else on that? Then we move to part 7B, which is our wider discussion on embracing that strategic role. Helen, if you don't mind, would you just repose your question for us so we can open with that? I think it's a good place to go.
Okay, if I can remember what I said. Yeah, I think we're trying to see how we look at the key issues that are important to the town, and how we, I mean, Sarah just talked about preparing motions or passing motions. But how will that then influence both of the two councils? Because some issues will be town council issues, some will be CBC issues. How do we get that interaction going, I think is the key thing. And trying very hard to be looking forward all the time, because the joint committee has been a bit backward looking a lot of the time in the last year or two, and we need to be forward looking, focusing on what the issues are for the town and how we might make that better, if I can put it that way.
Thank you.
I think that forward-looking piece is really important, and the resolutions are really important as well. Cognizant that it's going to be a challenge to see how they work in practice, but there's an opportunity coming up potentially under part 8. Little plug. But this, I think some of it's going to come down to a good partnership between the chairman and the vice chairman of the committee, getting good visibility of the agenda in advance, and potentially saying no to certain things being on an agenda. And that's from a CBC perspective and a town council perspective, because if all the town council is going to do is provide an update that a CBC councillor could get by attending a town council meeting, that's not a very good use of time. And equally, if all CBC bring to the table is some more detail on a consultation that the town council have perhaps already responded to, or which is on the next agenda anyway, then that's not a great use of time. So being able to say no occasionally, I think perhaps the next few meetings are, I think we've done very well with this agenda actually. It's the best joint committee agenda I've seen in my time as a councillor, 6 years. Going forward, if we can keep that mindset of, oh, is it just an update? Is it just a for information kind of thing? then perhaps that's something to leave aside and think a little bit more carefully about having 1, 2, maybe 3 items where we do reach some sort of resolution, whatever that might be. That way maybe we have an opportunity to be that little bit more strategic, but that's just my suggestion. That is not a proposal.
No.
Exactly.
Any other thoughts? Moira.
I'm thinking, so I'm trying not to just. I'm thinking about our forward plans that we have for our committees at CBC actually, because you're right, we want to be getting all of our views and make sure that they are getting through at local level, you know, at Biggleswade Town Council, but also at CBC. And how do we do that? That's the challenge, isn't it? But I'm conscious we have forward plans for most of our committees, so we know what's coming up. Executive has a forward plan, you know, and executive forward plan is 12 months in advance. So we can see what's coming up in terms of decision making. So that, can't we use that somehow to help inform what's on this agenda? Because then it's a really meaningful discussion that can actually then feed into those overview scrutiny executive and other committees. Is that sounds like a reasonable thing? Yeah. Because for example, there's no reason why we couldn't submit something to executive, for example, or as ward members, we couldn't speak at executive on something that we discussed here, or some council could come and speak at executive. If we come to an agreement, or we couldn't present a paper, so that our joint voice was heard on something that affected Biggleswade. So I just think maybe we do have to be a little bit. I suspect what we need is out there. We're just maybe not using it.
Yes,
so that's to our advantage.
Yeah, I mean, I can certainly speak to Kareem as for how we make sure because it did come out just this last week, didn't it? The executive forward plan for you're quite right for the coming years, so you know what items, and there's always quite a useful description as to what those items are. So it would be easy to determine whether that is of interest or directly relevant to this town, for example. And it's a case of how we make sure that's there with you in a useful way that can then influence the agendas and when you want to discuss things.
Yeah, I was just in where your alignments are already. Obviously, you're a joint partnership, you've got ideas about what aspirations for the town. So where the overlaps already exist, could you create your own joint forward plan so that you're covering what's Grant said? You have got your own aspirations of the town and discussed that it is. They're just thrown ideas out there.
Thank you.
I was just going to say that I think Councillor Whittaker has issued a bit of a challenge to the town council. We don't have a forward plan as such. And that's not the way that the town council has worked in the past, but I think it's worth us thinking about that. I mean, we know certain times of year that things will be discussed like the precept, but very often the agendas are put together because we get consultations from Central Bedfordshire or consultations from somebody else and all the rest of it, rather than, so we're reacting all the time rather than planning ahead. So I think perhaps the town council needs to just see if there's anything we can do to be more proactive like that.
I think you're right, because actually the decision to consult, for example, will come to exec a month, if not longer, before the consultation goes out. So actually, you could already know it's coming, and we could, it could already have been discussed well before that consultation document comes in, and you could even influence the shape of that consultation document. I think so. Actually, I think that might be quite a useful thing for the town council to do, because I think that would help some of that overlap as well. For sure. I mean, I would like that. I think that'd be a really good thing, because I'm sure we miss some things because we've not got that local input. And I'm just very aware that we have got the Schools for the Future programme in Biggleswade is really kicking off with some gusto at the moment. And so there are going to be planning applications, there's going to be all sorts coming through. So that might be something we want to consider as something we discuss, but I just think I want the town council's input in all of that, and we're going to need to all be working together on that to get the right outcome for our schools. It's just a big topic would be like the kind of put on your agenda.
Thanks. Yeah, really just sort of agreeing, I think, with those last couple of points about the full plan. I think from my point of view, clearly relatively new to this type of environment, that I could see that there are always lots of issues to react to, and some are individual small potholes and others are quite big issues. It would be great, from my point of view, if we could be quite aspirational. Are there any things that the town would benefit from that would need us to initiate, rather than wait until something happens for us to react against it? And just an example of such could be, and it's not a new idea because it's been around since at least 2010, probably before that, and this repeated in neighbourhood plan and others, but to the west of the town, between the river and the A1, town and country park. It's difficult to see how that would ever happen without some organisation, some group or whatever saying, yeah, let's pursue that. It's not going to come about reacting to something else, I don't think. Just an example.
Thank you.
Like to support what Cliff's just said. We've spent a long time talking to that, and I did have discussions with the previous chief officer of Shuttleworth. I don't know who the person who's running that now, because of course there's some of that land is Shuttleworth, but it is floodplains, so it's currently farmed. And we talked, didn't we, about possible access off of the Sainsbury roundabout, so that there was a fourth arm off of that roundabout to go into the country park with an immediate car park, and then opening up and leading down towards the Franklin's recreation ground. So, you know, there are strong possibilities there, and you know, that is something that would be very good for the town to take forward.
If I may, on that point, you spoke, Sarah, about the use of motions, for instance, to drive flexibility and putting things into the direction of the joint committee. So I'm just kind of idly wondering if that's a way in which we use process to add items like that to our forward plan, our own forward plan, and keep that as a standing agenda point with a focus and a direction of travel.
We've never used motions, it's very rarely in the committee, I don't think. But it's a mechanism for members to bring something forward. And today I'd like us to just consider this, I'd like us to consider that, and I think that's a really positive thing. And just to say, you know, at the beginning there, when we went through, you know, questions, I don't know how other CBC members feel. I have no concern at all about, I'm very happy to sit here and if you ask us questions and come up with answers. I think that's a really useful, productive use for the first 5 minutes of this meeting, and actually having that. And similarly, and we might have questions for you at some point. What's happening with X and Y and Z? So I actually think that's a really useful part from the beginning of this meeting. But then I think motions, I'm intrigued. But I'd like to see what happens. I'd like to give it a go.
Oh, we've got a small one tonight.
Oh.
You'll find it's a very important motion. It sounds like Hayley's beating me to it in that she's proposing that we have a members' questions section. Happily second.
Yes, I think.
I'm happy to propose that. I wasn't proposing, but I'm happy to propose. I suppose at the beginning we do have a member question both ways.
Yeah. Okay, and we have a seconder on that as well, right?
Yes, I second that, because that's quite a good catch-all then for stuff that is topical, and then we can just move through the hopefully slightly more forward-looking part. Yeah.
Okay, I have a show of hands all for that.
Yeah.
Thank you. We'll carry that on then. But there was also another point around the use of motions there, and particularly Cliff's point as well. As a point of order, typically motions should be submitted in writing beforehand. Am I right in thinking that? I'm looking at our heads of governance, etc. So typically, the point you brought forward, Cliff, I think is relevant, but is not necessarily a formal motion.
No, I use it as an example of what we could look at on aspirational looking forward.
So, but rather than break any further convention, might I suggest that we consider motions jointly and individually for the next meeting, and they are submitted in advance as part of the agenda, and that amongst anything else we wish to bring to the table should be considered at the next meeting as well.
Can I ask, as per CBC policy, because we always forget, can I ask that the clerk emails out like 3 days before the deadline and just reminds us, if you want to put any motions in, can you make sure you've done it by X date? Just because otherwise it gets past that date, and normally I remember just as you send the agenda out, and that's not right. So when you can, we normally probably 7 days before. So 10 days out, well, just send a reminder, 2 weeks out, send a reminder for motion, because it will soon. Thank you.
So I'm not going to put that on the next agenda. Or do you want me to?
If you're happy to, I need to do a little bit of work myself behind the scenes on the difference between a proposal and a motion and the rest of it. As I say, I'm new to this committee. So.
Well, I was just wondering myself, because what you're talking about is slightly more formal than we used to working with at the town council. So if we were having a discussion like this and someone were to say, I'd like to propose that so-and-so goes on our forward plan, it would go on the forward plan without a formal motion on another agenda. So I think we just need to talk about that perhaps, Chairman, and see how we work it. I agree that if there's something more complex that needs everybody to be able to read about, think about beforehand, it's that different level, isn't it? So I think we need to understand a bit more how you use motions at central beds, and you need to understand a bit more about how we work at the town council.
Please.
Sorry, I know that I'm like that in. Doesn't need that level of formality, because this is the bridging committee, bridging the gap between the town council and the local authority. Didn't do both. There's some
In different circumstances, yes.
depending on the topic.
Yeah.
Doesn't need the rigidity that we have in central beds.
I think that's what I was trying to say, that, sometimes it's quite okay to just propose something that's not a major decision. If it's some sort of major proposal, then obviously you'd expect a formal motion and maybe even a paper to explain more detail.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, I think it's about being that hybrid, isn't it, really? Because I think as the town council, I'm always enormously grateful that you do clerk the meeting. So therefore, we would be following your standing orders in terms of protocols around the management of the meeting. If you have to, if we were to run over for half an hour, then you have to agree, etc., etc. So we run to your standing orders. But if there are bits of how CBC do things, like except forward plans and things like that, that we can, share and adds value to how this particular hybrid arrangement operates.
Anything else on that?
Only that I think having them included on the agenda as motions is absolutely the rules under town council. I remember when I was mayor, I was quite adamant that people come up with pet projects all the time and they just want to put onto the agenda, and having something as a just slightly more worded as a proposal for discussion, where a decision follows, is helpful. But I get that there's some flexibility in there as well, so we can try.
I think the thing is that if it's something that's not on the agenda, then yes, you do need a formal motion.
Right.
If it's something that is under, we're discussing under an item on the existing agenda, then a proposal's fine.
And I'd also say there may be some motions that could be put onto this agenda that actually you'd want forward sight of, because of the town council, you might want to discuss them before joint committee. So I think is also, that's a scenario that we need to consider as well, where a motion is more appropriate.
Yeah, where it's an item that
Yeah.
we probably wouldn't have on the agenda otherwise.
Yeah.
I'll pick with Corinne and what sort of on a standing order and the motion stated that fits. I think that will work. I think it will actually hopefully give us probably a lot more to talk about there. Maybe my best guess. Anything else on item 7B?
So is the intention to have, say, an item talking about forward plans on each, for each meeting? In which case, you might very well find that something comes up where somebody does sort of propose a motion based on that item agenda. I mean, is that what we're looking at?
Well, I wouldn't see that as a problem, Chairman, because we wouldn't be discussing it. We're simply saying this is an item for future discussion. It's not like somebody coming forward with something that they want a decision on that night, which would be completely wrong out of the blue.
Yeah.
We wouldn't accept that at town council at all.
But that would be a standing item, because you're
Yeah.
talking about the forward.
We've sort of got that under 9, so we can try. It's sort of, I know we're not formally presenting what the executive forward plan is for Biggleswade, not only town
I'm
council.
gonna quickly pull up the executive forward plan.
I would think, Chairman, that it would be a good idea to have the forward plan circulated with each agenda, which is either as an item on the end of the agenda or a separate paper if it gets long enough to warrant it. I mean, and leave it at that.
Just conscious that was a little complex in places. I just want to make sure that all members here are clear on what we've discussed and how we're going to move forward before we move on. Are there any other questions? No? Good, thank you. Part 8B. We're on part 7 to part 8B. I'm not misreading that. Never mind. Oh, I see. 8. No, I get it. Part 8. Town Centre and Market Square Vision. Item C. We have BTC to present on the Market Square Vision and Urban Design Plan. I'm not certain who's taking that.
Yeah, I can provide a brief update. Thanks, Chair. So, the last few months, town council officers have been working with members to come up with a initial outline brief for what markets where vision could be and its associated impacts across the community as well. That brief was circulated under an expression of interest, which officers ran 5 weeks ago, I think it is now, to invite expressions of interest from urban design teams. This last Tuesday just gone by, town council at the town council meeting, town council resolved to agree with one particular supplier company, urban design company. And officers have reached out to that company now and established that there's going to be a timeline for this, which looks like it's going to be early December, but they will have a completed vision, which will then go to the 12th of December town council meeting. And on the assumption that that will then go through that, then we will have an agreed Market Square vision to then bring to this committee action agenda as well. Amongst the other work that's going on with this as well, relating to UK Shared Prosperity Fund and other things. Thank you. Comments, questions? Please.
From what we've just been told, I didn't know. I'm quite surprised that we might have something to take to the 12th of December on such a wide brief. Just for colleagues' benefit, we've been talking about doing this for some time. It partly came out of doing the neighbourhood plan. It partly came out because we have a Biggleswade Town Centre master plan, but that was 2011 or 12. It's not being refreshed and it's not likely to be refreshed, but it is still supplementary planning guidance. And we wanted to think amongst ourselves as a new town council, because we've got 6 new councillors out of the 15. It's not just the Market Square, it's how the town centre operates, particularly now that we've got the transport interchange, which is going to change things with bus circulation and all the rest of it. we are an old market town, so traffic circulation is difficult, and we need to get that balance between enabling people to use their cars, particularly if they're elderly or less able and need to get into the town in cars, but also to try and discourage too much car traffic. We need to be encouraging the cycling, walking. We need to try and work with bus companies and CVC about what services are being operated and how. And we did have some of us had a very useful meeting with Grant Palmer 2 or 3 weeks ago, and the bus officer from Central Beds. So the idea was that this is a very much an initial exercise that the town council will do, building on stuff that's happened in the past, because some of you will know of Bill Grimsey, who's written future cities reports, future high streets reports for the government. He's written 3, if not more, reports now. He used to be chief executive of a major do-it-yourself chain and another chain. I won't name either of them for advertising purposes, but he's very retail based. And he came to Biggleswade in February 2019 and spent the day with us, with some of his team who helped to write the report, and has gave us quite a lot of advice about what we should be considering within Biggleswade Town Centre. And this is partly to take that forward, as I say, partly to take forward what's in the neighbourhood plan, and to then be in a position where we've done our thinking and we can talk more formally with Central Beds and with other stakeholders. And again, there's going to need to be consultation. We need to involve the commercial side of things, the business community, and see where we're going. So if we really can do it in the next 2 months, that's great. But I don't think it's going to be terribly easy. But that's what we're trying to do, and that's why we've appointed this firm of urban designers.
Thank you, Madam.
Is, as part of this exercise, is there, will it involve any consultation with businesses or residents? The reason I asked is because this is obviously, the town council don't own the market square, but we're finally, I remember when I was vice chairman of the town centre management committee in 2017 or something, we tried to do this. For whatever reason, didn't make the progress that we're going to do now. But are we going to come up with a vision that we can evidence has the backing of the community? Because if we do, will it have more weight? That's my only question.
I think this initial exercise is not going to be that wide, but what we want to do is to gather our thoughts and then put stuff out there for consultation afterwards. But I think it's gather our thoughts, decide what we want, we think might be the way forward, or what the issues are. We need to talk to Central Beds primarily, but obviously because of the government money that's coming downstream. But even if it wasn't, we'd be talking to Central Beds. But then, yes, of course, we need to consult. But you can't, if we went out to consultation now and just said, what do people think needs to happen in the town centre? We wouldn't get anywhere. Even if we left the consultation open for 3 or 4 months, we wouldn't get very far. So you've got to have something to put on the table for everybody to pull apart then. Colleagues on the other council, and also members of the public and business people and all the rest of it. So that's what we're trying to do, to get that initial document that they can then be pulled apart.
I was just wondering if there is any input from Central Bed councillors into this design process, or because it sounds like the town council wants to put their ideas in, and this design consultant will have their ideas. But I'm wondering whether our views are welcome or are.
We wait to see what the people we've just appointed, exactly how they want to take it forward. At the moment, it's town council, but it will very, particularly if we take something to 12th of December council, then it will very quickly be open to others. But yes, ward councillors should certainly be involved.
Yeah, I think what we've done is we've given them a framework to look at. Look at ideas, bits, but nothing concrete. And so this is the sort of thing we want. Can you go away, give us some better ideas, work with the other the experience you've got, 'cause these people have got experience. One of them's got experience in Biggleswade for a start. Then you've got other towns in the country that we've worked with, and they've obviously learned a lot. It's their expertise, and they're supposed to come back and give us some of our ideas. Say, well, no, that's a non-starter, or yeah, that's a great idea, and then try and form something as a level and say to actually work with. Otherwise, it's just like jelly; it just wobbles everything. You instantly be solid, and you go right. Let's push it out and see what people really think and to go.
And they'll be using documents like the town centre master plan, like the neighbourhood plan, like the I forget what it's called, but the local traffic plan for, I think it's East Bedfordshire rather than just Biggleswade. But you know, so central beds documents as well as town documents, they'll all be used by this consultancy to help us to look at this. I don't know where it's going to go. I mean, but we're just trying to explore what the possibilities are to make the most of the difficult situation you've got. So say with traffic circulation, there's been a lot of talk about whether the market square could be pedestrianised, and then you think, and then when the A1 comes through the town, like it has several times in the last few weeks, you know, how does that work? So it's all that, just trying to help us to crystallise our thoughts, to get something that can then be discussed and evolved into something that may be the new money that's available can be used for or not, I don't know. But Pilgrim's best advice to us, and I'm sorry because colleagues on the town council heard this the other night, was know what you want to do, build a plan and wait for the pots of money to come along. Unfortunately, this pot's a little bit earlier than we might have wanted, or we're a little bit late in doing what we're doing. But that's what we're trying to do, get to the point where there's an agreed future for the market square and the rest of the town centre, because it is the commercial centre of the town, not just the square itself. I hope that helps, Jeremy.
Thank you.
So I'm conscious that the UK shared prosperity funding, obviously, I think it was 90,000 going to Biggleswade, and then 29 for cultural stuff, which has the big theatre but £90,000 isn't a lot of money.
No.
In the grand scheme of things, it's a relatively small pot of money, and I think it's got to be spent really quite quickly as well, hasn't it? So I wondered if the town council, are you waiting for the outcome of this to decide how to spend that, or have you already got ideas?
But if I could answer that, this is the whole problem. It really is the whole problem. The government's going to shower some money. And how can we spend it? And it makes me really quite angry, because I think that in that case, a lot of public money gets wasted. Because as something is dreamt up, because there's 90,000 to spend, how can we spend it? Rather than knowing what you want to do and saying, well, we've only got 90,000, but we could do this little bit and start building on it. So it does make me annoyed, angry that you know, you suddenly get a pot of money and you okay, well, how can we spend it? It's not the best use of all our taxes, is it? So I don't know. I know officers have been talking to your officers at Central Beds. I don't know any of the detail of it, and hopefully we can have a meeting fairly soon with our officers and the consultants and see where we're going with it. But I have no idea how 90,000 might sensibly be spent, except that if we can get the buses off the market square, and we have talked to both Grant Palmer and your officers about the possibility of stops in the high street, because we can't just have the transport interchange. Elderly people don't want to have to walk backwards and forwards. So can we get stops on the markets, on the high street, so that we can close the bus exit lane? That might be a step forward. I have no idea whether that costs 9,000 or 90,000. Well, this is the problem, isn't it?
Can I come back? I mean, one thing, because I was giving this some thought, because thinking, well, 90,000, it's enough to want to do something useful with, but not enough to do anything significantly huge with, and it does present something of a problem when the timeline is so short. And I was considering, as a town centre, you know, if you're in the town centre, what are the things that ward members as a town council we hear a lot about that would improve the experience of people visiting the town centre, because ultimately that's what we want to try and do. And this might be something you think is absolutely dreadful, but I just want to throw it out. I want to put the opportunity. We spoke earlier about KPIs and what CBC will fix and won't fix. And one of the things that we hear a lot about in the town centre is the state of the flooring, because it's a real mishmash, isn't it? And the reality is, outside Cafe Mocha, we know there's a lip, but it isn't a big enough lip that we would fix it. But we know that there's a lip, so we could spend, and it wouldn't take 90,000, but it would take some thousands. You could spend some of that money to say we'll go round and we'll look at all of those things that are actually making the flooring in the town centre treacherous in some places, not great in other places, just not optimal. And you could look at that and you could say we'll improve the general flooring because we know it's not bad enough for CBC to do, but as a town council we can address that with some of this money. Just throwing that out there, not saying that I think you have to do it, I don't think you do, but I just think for me I'm thinking about almost maybe slightly more pedestrian things than maybe you are, Madeline, in terms of things that are very achievable and that we can do within the resources that we already have access to, rather than bigger picture stuff, because I think that will need millions rather than 90,000.
Well, I don't disagree with making the market square safe, and it's not safe at the moment. But the thing is, until we know the best way to use the market square, because we're talking about there's the market layout itself, there are events on the square, how will that work best? Things like the Remembrance Parade. If we close the bus exit lane, that gives quite an extra area of market square. So again, do you spend money repaving things? Safety is one thing.
Yeah.
But if you repave it and then you decide you want things in different places, because it would be quite nice to have a nice seating area, and then we come back to the trees that you and I have spoken about before. So we might want trees in a different place, but you need to know what your overall plan is. Otherwise you waste money again. And money is so difficult to come by.
So what I would say is, I think, I'm not sure what the credential of this UK shared prosperity on that. I think it has to be new ideas. It can't be used for things that are already on the table. So the trees, for example, we've already secured S106 funding for, so that's kind of covered. So I suppose if you could do something that would augment that when it goes forward, which I don't think it can go forward fast enough. But like you say, you've got to think of the big picture. So you couldn't use it for the trees, but I get what you're saying. It is difficult without having the big picture stuff. And the centre of that is the future Century House, of course.
I'm trying not to mention that.
Oh, I'm going to grasp the nettle.
We all hope it doesn't have a future. Something that is urgent is the the various PowerPoints that we have around the town, as far as I'm aware. Some of the technology is not quite where it needs to be. I'm not aware of specific safety issues, but I understand that from a certain councillor who knows quite a lot about this, and we all know who that is, Councillor Knight, takes fascination by all things electrical, that some of the circuits are quite aged, and some of that technology is not necessarily coming towards the end of its natural life, but perhaps will be at some point. So my understanding is it's a CBC asset because it's on the market square. I don't know how far £90,000 goes in modernising and perhaps bringing some of those PowerPoints up to spec, but obviously they're crucial for the market and for lights and for town centre events. So if we're talking about something which is urgent and that is going to happen anyway, and is not such a locational thing in the way that perhaps benches and trees are, then maybe that's something to explore.
So we could have a safety theme to it, sorry. Have a safety team.
It would also help because at the moment we're spending money when we do something to have an electrician available to do things that people can't quite work out what to do. So we also have somebody there who knows exactly what to do. And it would take that cost away because we wouldn't have to have the electrician there all the time. I mean, a lot of it's about stuff we don't need really.
Mm,
And it's there and people say, well, can I use this and can I use this? I don't know what to use.
mm.
Whereas the guy knows what to do. But that would take a long-term cost off the market. Everything we run costs a little bit more because of that. And that would remove like a fixed cost that we have all the time.
Mm.
It would help. Allow things to get more.
And again, it's about making the town centre somewhere where as many residents as possible can enjoy the space, isn't it? And I think that's what we all want ultimately.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that is achievable with 90,000. While we wait for the big pots to come.
It's fine, I think we've had a good discussion.
I was just gonna wade in, just for the sake of clarity and again for the record, do we know what the spend date is on the UK Shared Prosperity Fund?
I think it's 12 months from the start of the next financial year is my answer.
It's spent by March 2025.
I think it's just useful for the record because again, you know, people may watch this back and wonder what timeframes we're all discussing here.
Do we know whose decision it is to spend money, and what the process is for you think?
I think
I
you know the process.
Yeah.
You've been through this before, so the town council have had this before. Essentially, the town council comes up with a series of things they'd like to do, and they discuss it. They essentially is approved, I think, by Central Bedfordshire, and then they just get them into it.
Yeah, it's done in collaboration with the federal base and then it's submitted through to, there's a group that needs other the actual terminology for it.
Local partnership group.
Local partnership group.
Yeah.
And then that group puts forward the next meeting in February 2024. And it'll put forward a series of recommendations through to Warwick Harbour to decide upon.
Thank you. And then you have another one.
Well, I was just going to mention this February 24th, because it was in the letter that Mary Walsh is
Yes, Councillor Walsh.
sent to that was on the town council agenda, but Corinne's just explained it.
Sorry, last one if we can, please.
I mean, the reality is that we want to have a vision in time to spend this money. So I agree with the safety thing. And I like the idea of fixing the electrics. That's a problem. Is it complicated by the ownership of the asset? Or can, you know, if it's for the town council to say we would like this money spent on this, is it okay if it's a CPC asset? Is that complicated?
I presume so. Yeah.
It's adding value to a CVC.
Given the way the money comes in, I would expect that it benefits everybody, so I would expect there shouldn't be much of a kickback to it, but if there is, let me know.
Yeah, it's not fixed, it'd be probably runs and runs.
Yeah, no, I think
It's
they've deduced the money. I think what we've come up with tonight is, but obviously the town council ultimately get the say on that, so that's really to take back, I think, to them.
Yeah. It's the gender, I think.
Fine, I am sake of time because we were presenting on the Market Square vision and we actually ended up getting into a debate about what we were going to spend some money on. So however, I felt it was pertinent and I felt it was relevant, but I am going to move us on if I can, please. To part 8D, where Councillor Grant Page is going to present a proposal on Brown Town Centre directional signage.
Yes, so just to be clear, this is the town centre, it's not the town centre that's brown, it's the directional signage. So this was originally worded as a motion, and I didn't really know how to present it because we haven't really done this before, so let's try and have to take feedback on the way it sits on the agenda. But basically, I had a little look, there is about £200,000 of uncommitted section 106 money, currently uncommitted, currently unspent, section 106 related to the town centre. So the problem that I see is that we have a huge amount of traffic that passes Biggleswade on the A1. Some of it manages to make its way to Sainsbury's because it can see Sainsbury's, and some of it manages to make its way to the retail park because it can see the retail park. What it struggles to do is see that we have a really nice town centre. So whilst I think it would be a bit complicated to get directional signage, brown directional signage, and I hope you know what I'm talking about here, is sort of tourist destination kind of brown
I
signage.
think they're called heritage signs.
Heritage sign, yeah, so we've got some examples of it in the town, so Jordan's Mill has them, the various points around Broome, etc. My proposal is that whilst I don't think we can get it on the A1 at the moment, I had a look on national highways, it looks like there's quite a few hoops to jump through. Perhaps what we can do is think about things which are within our control, i.e. the highways which we are responsible for at Central Bedfordshire, and see whether we could get some brown town centre directional signage, firstly at the retail park, but then also at Sainsbury's as well. So my proposal, and I don't think it's limited to that, I think also the railway station is a really important point. So my thought was probably 2 at the retail park on those roundabouts, perhaps 1 more as you get down closer to Stratton House and the Red Lion, a further sign at the railway station, and then probably 1 at the small roundabout near Sainsbury's and 1 more on Shortmead Street. So that'd be 6 brown directional signage saying town centre with an arrow pointing pretty much straight forward, because in each case it is straight along the road. So obviously officers are able to judge that and hopefully operationalise. I don't think it's too complicated to pick the right spots. We trust them to do that. What I'm hoping is that the joint committee could say we would support spending a certain portion of section 106 money, and we're not presumably looking at tens of thousands of pounds here, in order to purchase and fix that signage to encourage that traffic into the town.
Okay, so just as a point of order, I just want to clarify that clearly we don't have the delegated authority to decide where unspent section 106 has gone, nor do we have the skills to decide where any such signage might go. But what we do have is the ability to debate on taking that forward to the necessary officers as a use for that money. So I just think it's really important that we don't get too deep into the how much it's going to cost type of discussion. But thank you, Brian. Appreciate that. I'm going to go straight there.
I think it's very important to have one in the station. Only a few days ago, somebody came off the train from London and stood outside the station and sort of said, well, which way is the town centre? He was trying to get to a certain hotel on the town, on the town square, and he's saying, well, which way is the town centre? And I think I mentioned this on access to all and transport interchange discussions, but it's desperate to have signage that's immediately seen when you come out of the station. Then even maybe it might need an extra one, but as Chairman's pointed out, others will decide the practicalities. But I certainly support and second with the proposal or motion, whichever it is, to look at heritage signs for the town centre.
I'll do note.
Going back on your point, I have asked for some signage outside of the Saturday station. I think you. I've asked for that to be sorted, and they were looking into whether it was possible. I think I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but I think there might be a problem with this proposal, in that I think S106 money that's designated for the town centre has to be spent within the town centre boundary. Therefore, I don't think we can do it. I think that's correct.
I'm not familiar with the town
I
thing.
think it has to be spent within the town centre boundary, therefore I don't think it's possible. So while I don't necessarily disagree with what you're saying, I don't think we can use that pot.
Some other 106.
Yeah, but we could make it so that we could say when money comes available, we would like to, we would, or if money is available for signage, we would like to do that. But it might not be able to come from that part. It's just what I wanted to make you aware of. Yeah, you could use a nice down. No, because that's well. That's town centre as well. So it's town centre behind it.
Signage
Yeah.
as a suggestion.
Yeah. I know, but it has to be within the town centre, I believe.
We could double check that, I presume.
Yeah, we can double check.
Yeah,
I think,
it's not
I think,
and then
the- I think
we have
the point of the motion or the proposal is to understand what we can do in relation to signage of that type from that funding. And I think that's what we're agreeing or not to carry forward.
Mm.
The reality and feedback from that, of course, will decide where you go next. Sorry, Dave.
Just, I think, I'd say the principal thing is who you want the signage and the funding is whether it's one of these pots or somewhere else. And fully acknowledging your point about not getting down to the nitty gritty about the costs. Having had a ground sign put in recently for the Warden Abbey Vineyard, it is low hundreds. It's not going to take a big section of any of the pots you previously talked about.
So can we just make the decision that we want signage in the way that councillor Page has explained, and ask officers to both councils to find out whether there's a pot of money where it can be done? And of course, highways officers will have to get involved in establishing that it's a safe place to put signs.
Yeah, when the new retail park is in the planning stage, the town council did ask for signage to the town centre, and it is actually there, but it's barely visible. It's like a silver writing on a silver sign way up on a pole. It is there, but it's a token.
Well, we actually had this bright idea that we would have a signboard in the town centre listing the businesses that were up at the retail park, but they would have a signboard listing the businesses that were down in the town centre. That didn't materialise either, but you know, trying to help both commercial centres. It's hard work.
Expand slightly on your town centre signage idea, and I'm sure I've heard this mentioned a while ago. And I don't know if it was our heritage, our conservation area status that stopped this. One of the major problems if you come into Biggleswade is that there are lots of little car parks. There's Asda, but then there's lots of little car parks. And so I find myself going, well, ideally I'd like to park there. So I'll go there first, and then if I can't get in there, well, I'll drive around and I'll go to that place, and then I'll drive around and I'll go to that place. And I think actually, if you're coming through Biggleswade and you're thinking you might stop, if you can't get into the first or second place, you don't stop. You carry on going, and you find the next. You go to the next town. So is digital car park signage indicating how full the car parks are? So say there's full spaces, at the White Hart car park. Is that something that you can have as you enter the town centre to actually encourage people? To say to people, this is where there is parking, so they can go straight there, rather than having to drive around and find a space in one of the car park.
Perhaps we'll put that in our town centre.
But if we've got £200,000 of town centre and 206, building on your idea, is that something that we would be amenable to?
Okay, so
It has been discussed before.
I know, I think I remember it.
I've been around long.
I think I remember it as well.
what I think we should do on that basis then is I know the proposal run. I think we're clear on what we should do with that. I've got a second up from Madeline, but I'd like to show of hands on the brown signage for both councils to move forward and ask what we can do in that respect. So that's carried away. Thank you.
We'll just ask that it's limited, that we're looking at not just the retail, so it's both the north and south entrance to town off the A1 and the railway station.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you. Thank you. I think that's probably the February motion we've had.
Yeah.
But I think that's look to that point, right? We're talking about formalities and stuff. I think it's a really good way in which we can use that type of proposal, that sort of motion to do stuff that's good, and it's unpacked some other good ideas that may have floated around and got lost in the mist as well. So I think that was a bad use of time. Unless there's anything else on the department. Okay.
Can I ask that the idea of the digital signage for car parks, that the town council discuss that, and if it's something they're in agreement with, that that they take that forward to apply for some S106, some of the town centre S106, because it's something I would very much support.
Well, can we ask that that to be an agenda item, that specific thing on a future town council?
Yeah. But if the BJC, yeah, again, if the BJC agree to take that forward, it can be taken forward. So is there a second for that, please? Thank you. All in favour? There we go. Super. Part 9, forward look and updates from councillors, starting with CBC councillors. I'm going to look straight.
We have spoken less tonight. I suppose you'll have all seen, the big news really is obviously the developer for Land East is now known. I don't know if they've been in touch with the town council yet. If not, I'm very happy to put you in touch. And their previous developments have been interesting, different, I think. And it will be really interesting to see what they come up with. And I think from the country parks, the area in the centre of Land East is where is floodplain and is proposed to be a country park. It will be interesting to see what emerges, and they've had a chance to look at what they've done before, but they've done some interesting work before in Wales and in other places doing some interesting work. So they have some very good credentials around sustainability and a very good sustainability and community focus. So I'm optimistic with a big dose of skepticism because of where we've been before with this one. But I'm looking forward to seeing what comes forward on that.
But can I ask what the next stage is?
So my understanding is will be announcing the house builder that they're working with within the next couple of weeks. And that they are currently working on the reserve matters stage. Whether they have to come back with a further outline stage, because they might want to change what it looks like. And they are well within their right, but the principle of development obviously has been established and the section 106 has been signed, but they might want it to look quite different on the land. I don't know, I'll be honest with you, I don't know whether they will do that. So we wait and see, but I know they are working at pace to try and bring something forward sooner rather than later. So I think it would be good if, as a town council, you did engage with them, and I can definitely put you in touch.
Can I say that Central Beds officers and Councillor Watkins, when he was the cabinet member, did a lot of work on the land next to Baden Power Way, where it does partially flood, on the sports centre, including the football facilities that we desperately need in the town. So I would like to see that going forward. So we don't want that to disappear from the plan, because it was going to be football, it was going to be possible relocation of netball, it was going to be a splash park, it was going to be a decent sized car park, it was going to be a clubhouse with a hall that could be hired out. That was all being planned, and it got to a fairly advanced stage, and we really don't want to lose that. That's critical for the town. I mean, we've been looking for a home for one of our football clubs for a long while.
I was just looking at the executive forward plan a moment ago, and actually sports provision is in the executive forward plan, so that might give us an opportunity actually to discuss that in more detail in one of our future meetings, because I think that is something we might be able to influence. So I think that would be,
Yeah, well, as I say, the work's done,
yeah,
a lot of the work's done, but it just doesn't need to be lost now that we've got a different firm
no,
in
absolutely.
charge.
And of course, they have taken over the company, so they have all the documents, they have all of that information. And from my perspective, it'd be crazy to reinvent the wheel. So I'd be, they will, I'm sure, take a lot of documents that are already there and work with them. But yeah, I'm very happy to put you in touch, because I think it'd be a really useful thing for you to be in touch with.
Yeah, well, perhaps you could do that.
Yeah, I will do.
So on that, I guess that ransom strip is still an issue.
So the application that has approval is the last application that went before.
Yes,
Central Beds,
Dunton Lane.
which was the Dunton Lane and the corner of Baden Power Way, that is under the ownership of Central Bedfordshire Council, not under the ownership of Barton Grant Homes and Favourite.
But it'd be good if that could be resolved, because that's another option.
Absolutely, I agree with you. I think that would be preferable.
It depends whether you want more houses built by certain people or not.
Absolutely, the access.
What kind of thing like that be resolved by compulsory purchase?
Unfortunately not, that's not how developers work.
I have one update. I understand that we see a bit of a delay to the final phase of King's Reach. That planning application coming forward because houses aren't worth quite as much as they were. I suspect it's as they were about 12 months ago. So there's not going to be any haste to put that application in, I don't think. Which is in contrast to what we heard probably 10, 11, even 12 months ago when they first came to town council.
They were going to put an application in the spring.
Yes.
We're now in the autumn.
Yeah, we won't see.
So we get to enjoy sunflower building a little bit longer.
So how long is the planning permission?
There is no permission.
There is no, okay, well, yeah. Not even
I mean,
know.
it was a consultation document they released, wasn't it, originally? Well, it wasn't actually a formal consultation document, was it? But it was a,
I'm gonna say, no.
yeah. Thank you. Any other updates from the CBC council? I don't think so. No, I haven't.
Unless, I mean, like I said, if there's anything anybody wants to ask about, I'm very happy to do so, but yeah, I don't cover that.
Councillor Howe had a point.
Oh, there he is.
Good evening, can you hear me?
Just about.
Ah, would it be a good time for me to bring the committee up to date with my activities at all?
Please.
Yes, just a few of my successes. Crab Lane had the fly tipping removed and a new fence erected. Rose Lane fly tipping removed down the bank, including gas bottles. St John Street, maintenance came out to look at the paths and they were deemed unrepairable, so that's with highways at the moment. With Councillor Woodhead, we managed to get a new bollard put into the alleyway at Chapel Fields, which was quite dangerous. It had broken off. Currently working on some yellow lines outside McDonald's, which was you probably know about. And Kiteland's schools travel plan. And then I've also had cleared some pathways which were trip hazards and some residents' hedge that refused to trim, but with communication from CBC decided it would be a good idea, and he's trimmed his hedges back so that so there's no obstructions to pushchairs, prams and motorists. So pretty much up to date.
Thank you,
Thank
Paul.
you.
Any questions? I thank you, Paul. Having said no, I don't have any updates from the CBC Walk House perspective. I probably do, thinking about it out loud. So at the last council, I did ask an open question of the portfolio holder for children's services about potential future funding for a youth club to return to Biggleswade. There are clearly no commitments yet, but that question has been asked for a reason. And I am aware that CBC officers are going to engage in a consultation around youth services towards the back end of this year as well. So I do think that's relevant as a forward look update, because I am continuing to push on that lever as hard as I can. And just operationally, Grant, I know you've been asked as well about the state of Saxon Drive.
Oh gosh, yeah.
I had a bit of a revelation in looking at the maps and working with a couple of senior officers. But for those who don't know about the tickets, on Chambers Way, the small roundabout before Saxon Drive and the roundabout opposite Boxclub Drive on Saxon Drive as well, pedestrian crossings and pedestrian refuge either side of those roundabouts, shrubberies and similar in those roundabouts are awful for anybody that is other than sprightly or body crossing the roads in both of those locations is a hazard. There is no doubt about it. So having both Grant and I having received a number of resident concerns about this, I started to dig a little deeper, and I have since found that on the mapping, both of those roundabouts have grass on and not shrubbery or bushes, hence why they are not being cut. That has now been amended and changed, and they are on a cut scheduled for early November. I have asked for that to be done sooner. So hopefully we'll see both of those roundabouts improved in the near future. Anything else CBC side? Nope. Part B, BTC council board.
I think the major thing we're dealing with is really looking at development of our play areas, playgrounds at the moment. That's probably the biggest thing on our agenda, which we're looking at. And should commence, we have some external financing for big development of the Kitelands play area. We're also looking at Brunel, and then Brunel is the second priority, and then Brunel Drive, and then really a refurbishment of all of the rest of the play areas, which will be spread over a period of time, probably at least a year, probably more like 18 months or more. And otherwise, what else are we looking at? Oh, well, looking at a number of things otherwise that we should not really made a great deal of progress. Oh, Stratton Way Cemetery is on our list as well to redevelop or refurbish it, improve it generally in terms of its layout and the roadways in particular, and generally make it a more pleasant environment for people who are usually, well, not for the people using it, but for the people, their relatives and friends visiting them.
Oh,
I have a question. This is quite, possibly you might not have a question for this, but it might be relevant because we're all here. I know that residents have been asking questions about the entrance to Kitelands Park, where it floods. I think it's where it comes off Mead End, at the entrance, and it floods quite badly every time it rains, to the point where you actually can't get in unless you've got waders. I'm not sure of the ownership of that, and I don't know whether, and that's why I'm thinking it might be a useful place to raise that. And I think it's been sent to you as a town council, because it's kind of and it's a park, and therefore I think it might come under you. But again, if you need our support, if it does come under us, just do come back to me or to another board member and let us know. Because I know that this is something that seems to be getting a little bit worse.
I guess it depends where the flooding is.
It's right at the entrance, so this is where I'm not 100%.
So it's with the hard standing.
Yeah.
Which is probably not.
Probably belongs to highway.
Yeah.
I think so. I think can we just work to get some clarity on that, and then we can find a resolution. Because I think for me it's not clear, and I don't think until we know who owns it, I think we can't move it forward.
I have a question on your update, if I may, just around progress with the adoption of the King's Reach play areas. I know that's been an item a number of times, and as a resident of King's Reach, I always have a wonderful time wandering around and hassling Isaac Mercer to repair stuff. So I'm just wondering how the town council are pursuing that in respect of that work.
Well, we're pursuing it, but I would ask Karim, or our head of governance, to report on that, as he is personally involved in the process.
Thanks. So we met with Isaac Mercer 6 weeks or so ago, and what we're essentially waiting for now, which we've been waiting for a very long time, to be fair, is a detailed set of current drawings, which have red lines around them, certified, so that we can then those are passed over to us. Once they're arrived, we can then kind of digest that and work out what's what and how they actually differ from in 2000, I think it's 6, the original drawings that we had. And clearly, there's quite a lot of difference. But in terms of getting all that information through and then being able to do an assessment of the metrics, that's what we're still waiting for. To be fair, it's been pushed back twice in terms of the timeline, and we're still waiting, haven't chased.
as an addendum to that, I think I mentioned at the last joint committee, I've been in touch with them about some dangerous equipment on Taverner Drive. And as part of that, I'd seen a works request to the contractor to start that report. That hasn't what that is. But, thank you.
It's 40 something pieces of green space, isn't it? It's not as straightforward as just the bits with the fences. It's crucial as well though, because there's no real accountability over those green spaces. They're going to stop talking to me very, very soon. The number of emails I send twice.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly would be a major change in the operation of town council when and if we ever do take it.
Yeah, with the right sum of money as well.
Yeah, it's not no pulling in.
We probably need to employ more public grounds.
Oh, yeah,
Number, so it's a big issue, and the town council wants to get on with it, but we can't do it without knowing what we're taking on legally. We can't go ahead with the legal process without the drawings with the red lines.
I don't know if you noticed, but going back probably as recently as 2 weeks ago, there was the parks contractor out replacing the benches on the Baden-Powell Way, what locals tend to call the Blue Park. But in fixing all the benches, they then took a load of bins away and just left the poles behind. It's less. Anyway, that's very operational. Sorry. Great, thank you. You asked that question, please. So, anything else, please?
Just a very brief comment in relation to the works on your existing owned play areas that you're going through. Just to say, if you're able to do Kytlands and others, what happened at Franklin's, that's a real great improvement.
Well, that's certainly the intention. I mean, obviously, Brunel Drive is a lot smaller than that. But Kytlands, and we are going to retain probably more of the existing equipment in Kytlands than we did in Franklin's, but it still will be a significant improvement on what's there now.
Yeah, I think that Nick, it's not just the play equipment, it's the benches, cleaning benches, planting. I've heard a lot of very positive comments about Franklin's, and it's notable because you don't often hear lots of positive comments.
Yeah. Could I just one last thing on this? The kind of equipment you put in a play area, particularly in a residential area, I just urge caution, because there's a really good example of Stalcombe Close, which has some slightly more grown-up play equipment in it, and therefore attracts slightly older children. Often very, very close to a number of residential properties, and thinking about that early on, do you want that age group in that park, in that area? I haven't seen the plan for being on a drive, but thinking about things like that, particularly in residential areas, I think is really important. But I've no doubt that thinking's underway.
And unfortunately, we have to think about security as well, because we've had so much trouble at Franklin's and still have trouble there. It's not good.
We talk of Kings Reach and Baden-Powell, it's reminding me of a question that I had in my head for a while. So is Baden-Powell Way adopted by CBC yet? Is there any?
So correct me if I'm wrong, Hayley, and I'm sure I probably will be, but I'm fairly certain there is a stretch of Baden-Powell Way that CBC still own off of Saxon Drive, but from the Planet's Way roundabout onwards, that is almost exclusively Martin Grant homes.
And can I put this nicely? There is a strategic reason to keep that road, if you are a developer, until there is resolution around what is happening on land lease.
Okay. I just think it would be nice to see the B104 move.
It has to be offered up. We can't force them to do it, and they won't offer it up until it's in their best interest to do so.
I think it's fair to say there is nationally, but certainly in Central Bedfordshire Council, a real view and a focus on adoption of roads and paths and park and similar. And I do think we'll see that coming up at CBC in coming months as well. It's relevant. I don't take it as any, again, sorry, a creative license. I don't think it's any surprise that I saw in the Kelly Groundworks teams on Baden Powell Way this week. They appear to have put some form of traffic monitoring up on the Planet's Way roundabout. And we have new owners for the Land East. So I don't think that's coincidental in many ways, but who actually knows? Any other updates from BTC?
Yeah, could I just add what councillor North said, that we are continuing to work on the Drove Road Cemetery. The project there is phased over 3 years and we're now in year 2, and we've got the funding to carry on working on the restoration of the chapel, which is grade 2 listed. We're looking at the rest of the layout of the cemetery and whether anything can be done to improve it. But the big project at the moment is the boundary wall, and there was a large part of the wall that's needing rebuilding. But unfortunately, we've had vandalism there, and there was another section of the wall that was taken down block by block. It's incredible what people do. And we've just had to agree on Tuesday night to pay extra money out to have that rebuilt. It's not nice. I mean, we've got security cameras for the chapel itself, but you can't really have cameras watching when people may well be by the grave of a loved one or something. You just can't do that. So our hands are tied a bit, and unfortunately, I think the rebels know that.
Thank you. Any last questions on the BTC board? Then I am lacking any form of gavel. So I will substitute in a moment, but the date of the next meeting, item 10, is scheduled for the 18th of January. Can I just ask the floor for a little bit of commentary? We brought this to the evening for a reason, and brought this here for a reason, but I'd like us just to have a short discussion in the next 2 minutes, if we can, on timing and location for the 18th of January, please.
Well, I'm very happy to retain the 7 o'clock start, but I think it would be nice to alternate with the town hall. So I would suggest it's the town hall in January, and then we come back here for the meeting after that. It's good for you, Chairman.
Anybody else, any other comment on that?
I totally agree.
Totally agree. Fabulous, then we will go for an evening meeting again, if that's okay. On the 18th of January, otherwise I will close this.
Looking at the executive board plan, playing pitch and outdoor sports strategy is supposed to be coming to executive on the 5th of December, so before this meeting. It will be going to the sustainable communities on the 2nd of November. So there will be a paper that will come out a week before that. Talking to the town, talking to you as the town council, you might want to look at that and feed something back in that we can take back in, just as a thought. That was all, Chair.
Right at the death.
So sorry, what was the date of the executive, was it?
It's coming to the 5th of December executive, and it's going to sustainable communities overview and scrutiny on the 2nd of November. So the paper will be ready before the 2nd of November, the week before. So it's not that long.
I'm just looking at Corinne, thinking our agenda in November would be very long on this.
Even if you just circulate it so members can start to get the idea of what you could do, it might be worth it.
Yes, but thinking about what we were talking about earlier, we want to feed that back as something definite, so it needs a town council decision for that.
I'll leave it to you. I'll leave it to you. I've made you aware. I've made you aware. That's all I can do.
Fine, thank you. I will just say, for the record, we've had 2 members of the public turn up tonight, which I thought was lovely.
Literally a record.
And long may that continue, and we encourage that as we go forward. Thank you.